All the pieces of President Trump's so-called one big beautiful bill are in. Now, to be clear, this is the bill that includes the Trump tax cuts, which will cost more than $4 trillion, the spending cuts that the Republicans want, and the increase to the debt ceiling of more than $4 trillion, all wrapped into one. Now, Republicans crafted this entire thing by themselves, and they plan to pass this entire thing by themselves through the reconciliation process. Now, if you don't know what that is or how it works, go watch this video. Okay, because this thing is made up of 12 separate House bills totaling well over 1,000 pages. Yes, I spent the day today reading it. I obviously can't cover everything in the bill, so I'm just going to give you like one line for some of the biggest and most important items in the bill that I think you're going to care about. Now, if something catches your eye in this story, just write it in the comments and I'll try and make a separate video about those things with more detail like I normally do. Also, keep in mind, this is just the House version. This bill, if it passes the House, and that's a big if, it would still need to pass the Senate, and it's very possible that some of this stuff is going to change again. So this is not the final. Also, if you want to read these bills for yourself, I will email them out to you tonight in my Facts HQ email, so make sure you sign yourself up. Obviously, this is a very deep dive, so buckle up. Let's go. This bill makes the 2017 Trump tax cuts, which we're still using to this day, permanent. Taxing the rich, aka adding a new higher tax bracket for millionaires and billionaires, not included. This bill does include no tax on tips, but you still have to report them on your taxes. The way it works in the bill is from tax years 2025 through 2028 only, you can deduct only qualified tips you received on your tax return. You cannot deduct tips if you are considered a highly compensated employee. You cannot deduct tips if you are in a job that doesn't normally receive tips, and you cannot deduct tips if you do not have a social security number. This bill includes no tax on overtime, but it may not be what you think. The bill says your overtime is still going to be taxed on each of your paychecks. And then at the end of the taxable years, only from 2025 through 2028, you can deduct your qualified overtime pay. You cannot deduct overtime if you are considered a highly compensated employee, and you cannot deduct your overtime if you do not have a social security number. The bill includes no tax on car loan interest, but only for taxable years 2025 through 2028. It applies only to personal vehicles with a final assembly in the United States, and only applies to interest paid or accrued during those taxable years, up to $10,000 per year. It does not apply to a lease, a commercial vehicle used for business, and a few other types of vehicles. And it gradually phases out for Americans making more than $100,000 a year. This bill does not include no tax on Social Security. Sorry, seniors, I know Trump made that promise, but it's not in there. But it does allow seniors to deduct up to $4,000 from taxable years 2025 through 2028 if you itemize. This bill adds $500 to the child tax credit from 2025 to 2028. That would make the credit up to $2,500 for qualified taxpayers under a certain income for kids under the age of 17. The credit would go back to $2,000 a year after 2028. This bill does make significant cuts and changes to Medicaid, which the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates will absolutely cut more than $715 billion from the program over the next 10 years. But over that same 10 years, the CBO says it will also kick at least 8.6 million Americans out of Medicaid. For those who are still eligible, this bill would require Medicaid beneficiaries to pay more for doctor's visits and complete more paperwork in order to prove their eligibility. It would also impose a requirement for lower-income childless adults between the ages of 19 and 64 to prove that they are working at least 80 hours a month to qualify. And because of a federal credit reduction, it will make paying for the state portion difficult for a lot of state governments to handle. This bill passes most of the cost of administering SNAP food assistance to the states. This bill increases the work requirement age to 64 years old, up from 54 years old, in order to be eligible for SNAP, and redefines dependent child to under the age of 7 instead of under the age of 18. The bill appropriates $46.5 billion through September of 2029, specifically for Trump's border wall and other border barriers, with billions more allocated for upgraded Border Patrol checkpoints, new Border Patrol vehicles, and hiring more Border Patrol agents. The bill adds what's called a MAGA account starting in the year 2026, which is like a trust or a savings account for newborns that parents can contribute to every single year. If the child is born in the next few years, the law says that child would also receive a bonus $1,000 if the parents open one of these accounts. This bill cuts the clean vehicle tax credit, it cuts the energy efficient home improvement credit, and it cuts the residential clean energy credit. It also terminates the direct file program, which allowed all taxpayers to calculate and file their taxes directly with the IRS, eliminating the need to buy software like TurboTax or TaxSlayer. So if this bill is passed, yeah, all that's going to be gone. This bill solidifies into law President Trump's repeal of the de minimis tax exemption for imported goods coming into this country. So there will be no import that will qualify for the under $800 duty-free provision anymore after 2026. This bill sets aside $25 billion as a down payment for President Trump's Golden Dome, which Trump says would be sort of like the Iron Dome that's over Israel. The bill makes $625 million available for security planning and costs related to the 2026 FIFA World Cup and sets aside $1 billion for the 2028 Olympics. Of course, none of this is set in stone yet. We will have to wait and see if the Republicans in the House can pass all this stuff.